Roll call, please.
Ms. Jennifer Barnes,
Here.
Mr. Chris Collins,
Here.
Ms. Maria Liavano Cruz, Mr. Charles Garavaglia, Mr. Charles Gibson,
Here.
Ms. Betty Gutierrez,
Here.
Dr. Ernest Martin,
Here.
Mr. Daniel Milian, Mr. Juvenal Pina, Ms. Janice Tarbert,
Here.
Ms. Melody Torrance,
Here.
and Mr. David Young.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved, Madam Chair.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we ask that if you're going to speak on any of the items this evening, please stand to be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Thank you. Any continuances?
Yes, please. Good evening, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board. Francisco Garcia, Planning and Zoning Director, for the record. We have two items today that we would like to request be either continued or withdrawn. They are items PZAB 9 at 537 Northeast 70th Street. This is requested to be a continuance for the next available PZAB meeting. And item 12, a request for a waiver at 790 Lake Road. That item is actually being withdrawn. So the one that does require action actually from this board is item number 9. And again, I would look to the Hearing Board's office for guidance as to what the next PZAB agenda that is available might be.
April 2nd.
That is our request, that it be continued to April 2nd, please. That's all I have. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion for continuance on item number 9?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And that's it for continuances, no other applicant?
Madam Chair, good evening. My name is Simon Farrow with offices at 2 South Biscayne Boulevard. I represent the applicant on the waiver of PZAB 12, which is the one that Mr. De Francisco said was going to be withdrawn. So for the record, if you don't mind, I would like to request the withdrawal of the variance. I represent the applicant, the owner of the property. There was an appeal of the waiver, and after consideration, my client has determined that he does not need the waiver. He is not going to build in accordance with the waiver, so therefore I'm here to request a withdrawal of the waiver. The attorney for the appellants, Mr. Solomon, is here, and we have discussed the matter, and I believe he is in agreement with the withdrawal.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Ben Solomon for Bay Point Property Owners Association, the appellant in the matter. Based on the withdrawal of the waiver, if approved by this board, we will withdraw the appeal.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so if anybody else is here for item number 12, which is the property at 790 Lake Road, that item has been withdrawn. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
gentlemen.
Please note for the record, Mr. Pena is here and the Vice Chair.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to make the statement about the voting requirements for the applications, very briefly, that any votes on amendments to the comprehensive plan or to recommend a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, Miami 21 code, rezoning, or special area plan, or to approve an exception, shall be taken, but only with a concurring vote of a supermajority of board members present. That means that the supermajority consists of one more member than a simple majority for those actions. So the applicants are advised. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 1.
Item 1, file ID 14-00056AP, A resolution of the Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board recommending approval or denial of an ordinance of the Miami City Commission approving with conditions pursuant to Articles 3 and 7 of the Miami 21 Code, the zoning ordinance of the City of Miami, Florida, the rezoning of certain parcels for the development of approximately 11.45 acres of the Ransom Everglades School Upper Campus Special Area Plan, an educational facility located at approximately 3552, 3575, and 3695 Main Highway and 3171, 73, 75, and 83 Royal Road, Miami, Florida.
Good evening. For the record, Sergio Garrido with the Planning and Zoning Department. The Ransom Everglades School Upper Campus is in a special area plan because Miami 21 Code, Articles 3 and 9, allows the parcel greater than 9 acres, 9 abutting acres in size, to be master planned to allow greater integration of the public improvement and infrastructure and greater flexibility, so as to result in higher specialized quality building and streetscape design. Has been conceived to facilitate the master planning of the upper campus, allow to upgrade the facilities, provide the removal and renovation of some existing structures, create additional green open space, preserve existing tree canopies and historic buildings, and develop innovative LEED certificate state-of-the-art classrooms. For the analysis, it was considered the site comprised 11.5 acres approximately, fronts Main Highway, which is a scenic transportation corridor, is designated historic preservation resource, is located within high probability archaeological conservation area, and that the project as proposed is in compliance with the Miami 21 Code development requires. The Planning and Zoning Department recommends approval with conditions set in the package you have in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Amy Huber with the law firm of Shubin & Bass, 46 Southwest 1st Street, Miami, Florida. I'm joined this evening by John Shubin. It is my pleasure and my honor to be here this evening on behalf of Ransom Everglades School. We are so excited about this special area plan application. I'm joined this evening by Ellen Mosseri, the head of school for Ransom Everglades, and Jim Kogel, Calvert Bowie of Bowie Gridley Architects, Carlos Tuzet of Tuzet Studios, Jeffrey Manuel of Jeffrey Landscape Architect, Tom Butcher with Walker Parking, Joaquin Vargas with Traftech. That's our team. We have an amazing team, and we're very excited to walk through our special area plan with you this evening. I'd like to begin this evening with Ellen Mosseri, the head of school, to address you.
One moment, please. Please note that Mr. Milian is here.
Oh, that's okay? All right. Good evening, Chairman and Chairwoman, and thank you very much, Board, for hearing us. We truly appreciate this. I represent Ransom Everglades School. As you know or may not know, Ransom Everglades is one of the 3 oldest institutions in the city of Miami. That's saying something. The only 2 others are Christ Episcopal Church in Coconut Grove and Miami High School. Not only that, but we're the oldest independent school in the state of Florida, and we are also one of the top 10 day schools in the United States of America. We were founded, by Paul Ransom.
I'm sorry to interrupt. But
Surely.
We need your name and address for the
Oh,
record.
I'm sorry. Ellen Mosseri, 1990 Tiger Tail, Coconut Grove, 33133. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We were founded by Paul Ransom. He came here in 1893. He came here to tutor the sons of the magnates of the Gilded Age. They wanted their sons toughened up, and so he brought them here. He formed the first migratory boarding school in the history of the United States in 1903. Half the year was on Biscayne Bay, and the other half was in the Adirondack Mountains. And what they cared about, what he cared about, was a very important philosophy, that students learned by doing, experiential learning, being out in the wonderful wilds of Biscayne Bay and what we were at that time in Miami. He also felt that everyone should serve the community and give more to the community than they take from it. So you can see how we began. Pine Knot Camp on the left. On the right is the original territory of our school. Up in the right-hand corner, you see the sailors of his favorite sport. His favorite sport was sailing because he felt that man should prove himself against nature. It was man because it was a boys' school at that point. Very important to know that we have maintained academic excellence since his time. That's the first thing we stand for. The second thing we stand for is giving to our community. And I want you to know that every single building at Ransom Everglades serves the community. Please look at the right there, and you will see our new aquatic center. In the front is the Broad Reach Pool. That is a pool to serve the community. Do you know that 65% of students of color in Miami do not know how to swim? It is our goal, and we have used that pool to teach the use of Overtown Youth Center, Breakthrough Miami, Varick Park, how to swim in that pool. Plus, Coral Gables High School doesn't have a pool, and so their swim team and their water polo team swims in our pool before we get there. So everything we have is for them. If you will look at that middle picture in the middle there, you'll see a classroom. All of our classrooms are also used for civic purpose outside of our own school. That particular classroom is used by the teachers of biology and ecology in the city of Miami to learn more about the latest techniques. It's also used for the Children's Bereavement Center 2 times a week, and we bring everybody who needs a support group who's lost a parent or a son or a child or a daughter so they can come and meet with each other. To the left, you can't see it, it's in the trees, but it's a state-of-the-art theater. It's the best theater in South Miami. It holds 1,000 people. Every night something else happens there. We have the Alhambra Orchestra, we have this youth community orchestra, we have ballet companies. Every night it's used for the community. On the right, you see that lovely slip. It's used for sailing team, our sailing teams, but it's also used for sailing teams from most of the Ivy League schools who come here in spring. They use our facilities. They also bring a lot of business to Coconut Grove, and I think that's a very important point. Note that slip. From that slip, our students left in their sailboats to go to Island E. Island E is an island just outside on the Biscayne Bay to the left. We completely redid that island for the city of Coconut Grove, so that the residents of Coconut Grove could have a place to go and swim and picnic and park. That's what the school is about, and what we need is to have you help us continue our tradition. We need to build new buildings. We were founded in 1903. Some of our classrooms are not exactly from 1903, but they're certainly not updated, and we need that. We need to build a STEM building, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, and I think we'll have the only building, STEM building, in South Florida, and we need to build a humanities building. Why? Because today you must bring the disciplines together, because to innovate in education you must collaborate. So if we're going to make our kids really the citizens of the world, that's what we need to do. So please help us continue to serve Coconut Grove, serve our students, serve the city of Miami. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I'm going to bring forward Carlos Tuzé of Tuzé Studios to talk to you about the campus as it currently exists.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening. My name is Carlos Prio Tuzé, principal at Tuzé Studio with offices at 4565 Ponce de Leon Boulevard, Coral Gables. This first picture, and what I'd like to do is take you through the campus very quickly, but this picture is very appropriate because it shows you the school as you first see it from Main Highway. And when I first saw the campus in 1968, it really did not look very different. The canopy of trees that you see now was maybe a little bit younger, maybe 40-some years younger. But that canopy of trees is actually one of the critical aspects of the campus that we are maintaining and helping to embellish. The site plan, what I'd like to do is take you from the west side of the property on Main Highway out to the bay. And the canopy of trees that I mentioned, the center of the campus, we have a series of very large banyans, and part of the original hardwood hammock is still very much in place. As we move further down the site to the original quad of the school. We see the dining hall, which was designed by Robert Law Weed in 1958. And just beyond that, at the place where the Atlantic Ridge breaks through the fabric of grass, is the Coral Bluff, where there's the remnants of an oak hammock, of a mature old hammock. Here are two of the most recent buildings on campus, the state-of-the-art Performing Arts Center and Auditorium on the left. On the right is also a relatively new building. It's the Arts and Fine Arts, the Fine Arts structure. A little further down, we'll see the cottage and the pagoda. The pagoda is one of the original buildings from the time that Paul Ransom started the school. It goes back to 1903. These two buildings, over the last couple of decades, the school has invested heavily in restoring them to the way they were back in 1903. They're beautiful examples of some Adirondack techniques brought into the tropics. And almost to the bay, we see the aquatic center that Alan referred to. And beyond that is the football field, bounded on one side by natural hammocks, and on the right by an inlet that serves the sailing boats.
So why are we here? We are here to apply for a special area plan, and we are so excited to be the first school in the city of Miami to go through this very unique process. When the city first recommended a special area plan process for the school, they were excited to begin master planning what their campus could be and would be in the future. And when they first sat down to think about what they needed on their campus, they first wanted to look at and make sure that they were able to preserve the unique character of the Ransom Everglades campus. So of most importance to the school was to make sure to preserve the existing tree canopy and the two historically designated buildings. And so as we walk you through our special area plan, you'll notice that the tree canopy that you see remains and will only be enhanced, and that the two historic structures on our site will remain exactly in their location with the tree canopy that surrounds them. The next thing that was important to us was to make sure that not only did we meet the goals of the special area plan, but that we exceeded them. And so you'll notice that through our site plan, we were actually able to create new green space and to create a new quadrangle within the campus. The special area plan process also requires that you have 5% of civic space that you give back to the community. As you heard from Ms. Mosseri, there isn't a building or a piece of green grass on our campus that isn't utilized by this community. But we're excited to actually be able to expand that and to provide almost 30% of civic space on our campus. Some of it which also mirrors our green space, but to be able to provide that and open that to this community. Finally, the campus has always found sustainability very important within its education and within the principles of teaching the students. Unfortunately, because of the age of our campus and the age of our buildings, currently Ransom Everglades does not have a single LEED certified building on its campus. Through the modernization of this campus and the removal of several existing structures, we will replace them, and we're committing in our agreement to replace them with LEED Silver certified buildings at a minimum. We're also working through to develop and to look at solar panels, water cisterns, and other sustainable elements within the campus. So we're very excited, and I'm going to turn it over to Cal Bowie to walk you through our special area plan.
Thank you, Amy. My name is Calvert Bowie. I live at 3460 Zula Road in the Plains, Virginia. I am a principal in the firm of Bowie Gridley Architects, and we are specialists in master planning, programming, and facilities for educational institutions. We work across the country, and as a result, we see programming and facilities trends as they develop and frequently carry them from place to place. Late in 2012, we were invited by Ransom Everglades to come and look at their campus specifically in relationship to administrative and academic spaces and needs. As Carlos has said, they had recently addressed their athletics and their arts buildings, and those buildings are now up and reflect the standard of excellence that this school stands for. By the end of 2013, we had completed a program-driven needs analysis which identified several different projects that the school needed to undertake in future years. Those really consist of, first and foremost, a new STEM building, as Ellen described, an administrative building which would consolidate all of their administrative needs in one site, whereas today it's spread out through 5 different smaller buildings in the front of the campus. A replacement structure for the humanities classrooms, which would allow them to be much more current designs for their classroom and teaching spaces, which would allow for collaborative learning, and an expansion of the dining hall. The last project, of course, would be the repurposing of the existing math and science building, which exists on the east side of the site. In general, 21st century education facilities at this level are requiring more space than the earlier versions to allow for collaborative learning and consolidation of all of the divisional interests of the various disciplines. After programming, we engaged in a careful analysis of this wonderful piece of property. And what we did was we really identified different building zones, which are all showing on this graphic with the associated heights. In that pursuit, we looked and thought very carefully about the aspects of this campus, in particular, the character of the existing spaces, the amount of open space and its importance to the program, the height and massing of the existing buildings, and in particular, the vegetation and the tree canopy and the historic structures. All of those led to the designation of these building zones as they've been presented here, and they were greatly discussed with your reviewing officials as we went along and participated in finding the right set of parameters for these areas. So to walk you through the 5 building projects, in the upper left hand of the graphic, you would see the administrative building. That's currently a parking lot. There are 2 very important trees on either side of that, 2 banyan trees, and this building is sited between the 2 on what is today largely asphalt area. It's 12,500 feet. It contains new spaces for the child care that the school offers, the business office, the Parents Association, and the development people for the school. Also in Zone B, further along to the right, is the dining hall. Currently, for the population that exists at the school, the dining hall is inadequate. It's too small. So what's proposed for that site is really building an additional story on that building on the existing footprint to allow for additional dining space for the current population of the school, which would remain the same under this proposal. In Zone D, which is at the bottom of the site, what's proposed in the middle is a 3-story STEM building, which would consolidate the sciences and the mathematics departments in that facility and provide other spaces, small meeting spaces for the balance of the programs. That building is nestled into the middle of the campus and consistent in height with the auditorium building located to the left. One note about the administrative building also is that because of the vegetation that everybody's been talking about and that you saw in those early pictures, even though that building is located close to Main Highway, it really would be virtually not visible from Main Highway. And again, you saw it in the rendering that we showed. Also in Zone D would be to the right-hand side, the replacement of the other orange or pink block, which is the replacement of Ludington Hall, which is currently a 2-story building with a 3-story building on essentially the same site. And lastly, in Zone F would be the redeployment of the Math and Science building, which exists today, and potentially a replacement of that sometime down the road in the future. So those are the 5 projects that have been looked at. Now, what's there and goes away? This next graphic, it cites you in terms of where the photographs that follow, which will show you the buildings that are proposed for demolition. None of these structures have any architectural significance. They're all later buildings. They're all largely 1-story structures, and they've all, none of them has been identified as historic in the structures report that the city prepared for the school recently. Historic structures from the City Preservation Office. So let me just quickly walk you through the buildings. Number 1 is the business office, was built in 1969, 1-story, largely coral rock structure. Number 2 is Timken Hall, which was a house, built in 1954. 3 is the advancement office, built in 1960. The REPA, which is the Ransom Everglades Parents Association, and the proposal maintains one piece of that to create a separate identity for that group that would carry on. In that part was built in 1940. The daycare building, built in 1992, is probably the youngest of the lot. And Ludington Hall, which I spoke about a minute ago, was built in 1964. The issue with Ludington largely is the floor-to-ceiling height is extremely low. The rooms are small. There's structural walls along the corridor. It really can't be repurposed as a classroom building in today's world. The last 2 buildings are the Math and Science building, which I just spoke of a second ago. It sits downhill from the balance of the campus. And the Math and Science Pavilion, which was built in '73, which is really an open structure that sits in the quad space as it exists today. So another part of the work that we did for Ransom Everglades was really to do concept design studies, so to dig in a little bit on what these buildings would look like and how they would be configured on these individual sites. Now, these are just initial concept designs, and they were set within the parameters of understanding the program, so they reflect the right size and mass, and laying out options for the way that the architectural finishes could be created on the outside of the building. One thing that's important to understand is that the school's intention is to create buildings that are consistent with the fabric of their campus, and that's the context that we've been working in. So this first sketch shows 2 different potential renditions of the administration building. On the top is one that's rendered in quite a traditional way. They're the same bulk and mass, and the one below is rendered in a more contemporary way. They're both intended to go with the context of the buildings that exist on the campus. One of the important things that this slide also shows is the band cottage, the historic band cottage, and the fine arts building, which is adjacent to this site, and Cameron Hall, which is the one that sits in the middle of the new quad and the existing quad, so that you can understand the size and scale of these buildings relative to the ones that exist next to them. Likewise, this next concept design studies images reflect the STEM building, which is a 3-story structure. It's designed in a way so that it would have a porch which would elementally bring, as you go to the quad space, the mass of the building down to 2, and the adjacent Cameron Hall to the right, to the left of it, is again a 2-story building. That's where the library is on the campus today. And you can see the relationship and scale to the auditorium and the rehearsal hall of the Performing Arts Building that are immediately adjacent to it, to the right, to the west. The one down below is a more contemporary rendition of the same building. So most important, these new buildings would shape a quad and another significant green space in the center of this campus. Cameron Hall is the building in the center. The building to the right is the STEM building in a traditional rendition with the porch on the front. And to the left, you can see the Fine Arts Building and the Historic Cottage. And what's really significant, I think most significant about this proposal is that all of the parking that exists in this part of the campus is removed to the perimeter of the campus, which will dramatically change the way that the center of the campus feels. And remember that first picture where when you looked in, you saw a field of cars? That won't be the case anymore. We thought it would be helpful for you to see images of some of the recent STEM buildings that have been built by the best schools across this country. And one significant element of these buildings is, again, that they're all multi-story structures. And they are that. Some of these campuses have vast amounts of land, unlike Ransom Everglades. But it's important that these program elements all work together, that math, science, and all of the disciplines of science are proximate to one another, and that's why it leads to multi-story designs rather than sprawling 1-story or even 2-story configurations. Speaking again to the materials, it's the goal of Ransom Everglades to make something that fits in. We've looked at the palette of materials that's established on this campus. It's a rich one. There's lots to work with. Largely the coral rock and the stucco buildings. The historic buildings have wood siding and even shingle roofs in the case of the pagoda. So the intention is to really use that palette and match it, and also to look at indigenous architectural forms of Florida, which are open covered walkways, louvers, deep overhangs. All of those elements would be a part of the designs of the buildings for this campus to make them fit into the campus and fit into the context of the community that the campus sits in. This graphic is the zoning highlights, which you all have. It shows all of the relative changes, and the surprising thing about this project is how small the changes that come, the percentage changes that happen on this campus with the project of this magnitude. Most importantly, one of the areas that has been talked about consistently is civic space. And this graphic shows the change in the civic space and the distribution of it, and how much more of it will be towards the front end of the campus when this project is done. And lastly, and very treasured by the school, this graphic shows the increase in green space on the campus and the changes in paving. Please note that the code allows for a reduction of 25% in green space for the use of impervious paving. This master plan proposal meets the code requirement without applying that reduction. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Madam Chair, I have a question. I was wondering if there's anyone in the audience that's going to be speaking against this proposal. There will be? Okay.
And with this is an appropriate place to take you through our landscape plan.
Good evening, Jeffrey Manuel, Studio Jeffrey Landscape Architects, 9838 Poplar Place, Orlando, Florida, 32827. Thank you for having us this evening. As Cal has walked you through the master plan, one of the things that I want to take note of when we were looking at the landscape master plan is that if you look at the existing configuration of the open space, the front of the area had a bunch of sort of this fragmented open spaces. What the new master plan does is actually consolidates all the open spaces together to create a contiguous green space from Main Highway all the way to Biscayne. As you can tell, we've always talked about the existing canopy and importance to it. But to Ransom Everglades, it's more than trees and shrubs. It's the idea that open space is as important to academic buildings. It's that the idea that the indoor and the outdoor spaces sort of are both cohabitable learning environments and how we can actually enhance both together. One of the things is that it's creating this sense of place. It's using this idea that this is a campus of individual buildings that is stitched together by open space. It's the idea that students are allowed to travel between buildings and use the outdoors and educational space. And looking at several ideas, we've developed several principles here that talk about how we've oriented and arranged the campus. One of the big reasons as we do this is the idea of that design actually does count towards recruitment in terms of best students, the best faculty. It's the idea that if you create this great environment or sense of place, that you will get the type of students and faculty that believe in sort of this outdoor-indoor learning. What you could see from the landscape master plan here is the contiguous spaces that are connected together. On this 11-acre so campus, we have almost 475 trees. On a new campus project I'm working on at Florida Poly, where we have a 200-acre campus, we've only got 210 trees. What that says is if you exclude the fields, the aquatic center, and the parking areas, that this campus is almost 90% naturally shaded for pedestrians, which is a very unique environment in Florida. What they've also done is hired an arborist to actually document every single tree. It's important that the trees are actually as important as the buildings to actually document the location, the health, as well as safety issues relating to age and how they were going to last through the years. One of the things of the master plan is that we are preserving, making an attempt to preserve every single tree as we sort of expand on the master plan, and as new infill buildings come, we're carefully sitting in them in situations where these trees can survive. We're not doing anything different. To be honest, we're not really doing a landscape master plan. We're doing sort of a preservation plan, if you could call it. We're just continuing of using the exact sort of landscape material that's on campus and expanding it onto the new building elements. Lastly, as you mentioned, we were talking about this idea of a LEED campus, doing LEED buildings, looking at green technology such as rain collection and stormwater, doing rain gardens, as well as solar and herb gardens, and doing issues that relate to this indoor-outdoor learning environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, we'll have Joaquin Vargas present our traffic plan.
Thank you, Amy. Chair, Vice Chair, board members, Joaquin Vargas with TravTech Engineering, Office 8400 North University in Tamarack, that is Broward County. I'm going to talk about two areas. One is traffic impacts, and the other one is the internal circulation for the school. Before that, I'd like to share that I have done numerous site visits. I also personally observed traffic during the morning drop-off period, in the afternoon the pickup period as well. Observed traffic conditions on Main Highway, and also there are four police officers. There's two that are assigned to Ransom, and there are two that are assigned to the other big school, which is Carlton. And I spoke with them, I observed how they're controlling traffic and so forth, and I will be sharing that with you all. In terms of traffic impacts, there are no new traffic impacts with this application. And the reason being is because there is no increase in the student population. However, at the request of the UDRB, they wanted us to look at traffic conditions on Main Highway, which we did, and I will share with you some suggestions that we have to try to make traffic conditions better during the morning and afternoon. But let me first talk about the internal circulation. This next slide is the existing circulation within the school. The important thing about circulation is that you contain all of your school traffic on site. During the morning when they're dropping off, traffic starts to accumulate, forming queues. You don't want those vehicles to back up onto the highway, creating some traffic issues. That is not happening. We're containing everything on site during the morning and afternoon the way it should be. That red arrow that you see is the current circulation pattern. You will notice that there are two yellow lines. Those are the locations where the students are picked up and dropped off. Now, with the current conditions that we have some areas that are a little bit challenging, nothing unusual of schools, and those are highlighted in those boxes. Because of the way that the circulation is, we have some conflicts between the circulating vehicles and the parking areas. And again, that is not uncommon for schools, but we do have those conditions. We also have a couple of pedestrian crossings, the traffic flow, those are in those little blue lines that you see. We also have a little area of traffic blockage and a merge condition. That's when two traffic streams are coming together at a certain location. So that's the existing circulation plan with the existing school that we have. Again, we're containing everything on site. This is the proposed plan. I should mention that the existing conditions, all of the traffic enters and exits via main highway. And that is the primary entrance and will continue to be the primary entrance, the sole entrance for the parents to drop off and pick up their children. This is the proposed plan with the current application. You see that we have two primary areas and we're segregating the two. The circulation is uninterrupted, which is depicted with the red line. That one has no conflict with parking and unparking maneuvers. Also, there are no conflicts with pedestrian crossings. So that is the primary circulation, which is free of obstruction. You will notice that the red circulation has two areas designated in yellow. Those are two new proposed drop-off and pickup. Those two alone provide about 60% more drop-off and pickup capacity than the existing conditions, which is a big improvement. Makes the whole site more efficient from a circulation. The blue is a secondary drop-off and pickup. In the event that for some reason we have a rain day or we have too many parents arriving at the same time, we have that other flow that we will implement, if necessary, with a third location depicted in yellow for the drop-off and pickup. Those three together provide 3 times the capacity for dropping off and pickup than the current plan. Again, this makes it a lot more efficient, which benefits main highway because we get traffic out of main highway much quicker. I should point out that this plan was discussed. We went back and forth with the City of Miami staff, and they approved the plan, this one that I'm sharing with you all. Now let me talk about a couple of recommendations or observations that we've identified on main highway to try to improve traffic conditions. The administration of Ransom got together with the administration of Carlton, and there were some things that they discussed. One of which is, as I mentioned, there are 4 police officers controlling traffic out there, 2 for Ransom and 2 for Carlton. They're doing a great job, but they can do things a little bit better by having the same process and having coordination between them. When one releases traffic at one end, the other one should be waiting for those vehicles so that they can release those quickly. So we have talked about getting all 4 officers together, talking about a common plan and how we can have a little bit better coordination between the 4 officers. The other thing is that both schools agreed that they're going to look at their start and end time and try to do some adjustments to minimize the overlap. Again, that is a benefit for main highway as well. I mentioned that all of the changes that we're doing for Ransom makes it a lot more efficient. When you have a better efficient circulation, it benefits main highway. Well, Carlton is in the process of building a new wellness center. As part of that new construction, they will do some improvements within their circulation, which will make it in effect more efficient, again, benefiting main highway. That's, in summary, my report regarding traffic impacts and circulation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
In summary, that is our special area plan. We're very excited to move forward. We'd like to thank all of the amazing staff who are sitting over there and have spent endless hours with us over the last 6 to 8 months working through this plan and working through this process. And we would ask you to adopt their recommendation. We are in support of the conditions that they're proposing this evening, and I'd like to reserve a few minutes for rebuttal if there's any comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before I open it to the public, does anybody have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Yeah, I just had a few questions concerning the traffic study.
Yes.
Was the study also, did it take into consideration some of those side streets as well? Franklin Avenue, Charles Avenue, because I know Main Highway is kind of the main thoroughfare there. What about some of those other streets? Because there gets a lot of traffic from Ransom and I guess that whole educational piece to those streets as well.
Yes, we did do some observation on those streets. As you mentioned, the main problems occur on Main Highway. You specifically mentioned Franklin. We observed that some parents do park on Franklin. You do have on-street parking on both sides. They drop the kids. The good thing is that one of the officers that is assigned to Ransom is assigned at that intersection of Franklin and Main, and he is controlling the pedestrian activity that is occurring at that location. But the main challenges that we have are on Main Highway, and with those suggestions that I shared with you, I think traffic will be improving as a result of that.
There's also I see that there's a reduction in parking. I'm a little scared about that because, again, I'm familiar with those streets, and to go from 268 to 210, where are those cars going to park? Because Ransom is pretty packed with parking, and so parking is usually done on those side streets, again, Franklin and Charles. So you're going to add 58 more vehicles, I'm assuming, to that street because they can't park inside your footprint.
Let me just get you back to our plan. So the current plan proposed provides for 210 surface parking spaces on campus. We also have reserved the right to provide an additional approximately 100 to 120 spaces on campus if we go underground and below the existing parking, below the two new buildings, or to go one level above, and we've agreed to go back before UDRB to the extent that we intend to move forward with a one-story parking level. It is not the intention of the school to move forward with that. The school more than meets their zoning requirements for parking. So I understand your concern with the loss of those spaces. Currently, the school has approximately 100 juniors that park at Paradise Parking. We have explored the other local parking facilities within the area within a 500-foot radius, and they can more than satisfy the 58 senior students that would be displaced from the campus. The school controls who parks on and off campus, just like most other universities and schools. And so there's more than sufficient parking within the area to accommodate those students. And so that would be more favorable to the community to utilize the parking that currently exists that is not used during the school day hours. So those parking lots remain empty during the day, but for the students. Students at Ransom are not parking on the side streets currently.
You said that they're not parking on the side street?
No, they park at Paradise Parking.
Well, I just respectfully have to disagree because I live on that street, so I know that there's parking on that side street. And my only concern, and again, I'm pretty much in favor of the project. I'm just concerned with the residents on those both streets with the parking and the traffic. And I know that the parking will be an issue if it's not specifically addressed. As if it reverts or it goes to the 210, I know it's going to be a problem.
If it goes to the 210, those 58 students will either go to Paradise Parking or to the other local parking facility, or in addition, Carrollton and Ransom Everglades are also in conversations with the Miami Parking Authority for the development of a parking garage at the Coconut Grove Playhouse. So there are a lot of options within the immediate area, and so that is our preference is rather than to put lots of parking on the campus is to utilize the existing parking. We recognize your concern. It's a concern to us. Traffic, as we said, we've made it very clear that the school is not intending to expand with this application. And so there is no net new traffic impacts as a result of this application. But because it is so important to us, and we know it's something that's important to you and to the rest of the community, we've had Joaquin make unbelievable strides within the area, meeting with, Ms. Mosseri has met with Carrollton, and we commit to you that we will continue to work at making Main Highway operate more smoothly, which then should trickle to the side streets as well.
Okay, Ms. Torrance?
Hi. Did you say that you would consider coming back later with that to have a taller building so that you could have a one-story garage in it, or you would sacrifice classroom space for a garage?
No,
what were you
no.
just saying? I wasn't clear.
If you look at the building plan, which is in B414 on your book or currently on the screen, if you look immediately below Zone D, where the new Ludington Hall, that area is reserved as a parking zone. And so to the extent that it's deemed necessary, and again, it's not the desire of the school to do so, we would put just one level below and one level above surface, and that would provide an additional, I think it's approximately 120 spaces in addition to the 210.
Behind the STEM building?
Yes, and then because those two buildings, Ludington and STEM, are above the bluff, that area is also ideal for underground parking, which is something that we would consider as well, going underneath those two new buildings.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I know you were mentioning right now that you were in communications or were considering being in communications with someone about maybe leasing space for parking, maybe in the meantime, if there's, for those 58 parking spaces. Is there someone that you're talking to right now, or is that something that you guys are just considering, or, because, I mean, for the most part, I'm in approval of this, but at the same time, that is a concern of mine as well as the parking.
So the campus as it sits now with 268 parking spaces will continue for some time. This is a master plan, and so the next phase will be fundraising and then designing buildings, and then we'll move forward. So we have reached out to the two local parking facilities in the area. That was something that was required by the city and required by the county, and they do have more than enough availability for us. But in the interim, we are also working, and I can have Ellen speak to this if you'd like, with the Miami Parking Authority, who will be building an office and parking structure, and they've reached out to the schools, and they'd like us to partner with them, and that's something that we're exploring. So it would all kind of work within the same time frames.
And then I'm assuming they take a little shuttle or something to the schools?
They'll just walk right across the street like they do now. That's why we have a crossing guard.
Oh.
So the crossing guard at Franklin is specifically for those 100 students that park at Paradise Parking. He makes sure that they cross Main Highway safely.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'm going to open it to the public. If you wish to speak on this item, please come forward. I ask that you give your name and your address for the record first.
Javier Gonzalez, 3622 Solano Road, Coconut Grove. Also the chair of the Coconut Grove Village Council. And mine are just questions that came to me. So it's more questions that I'm gonna be asking. Obviously, one of them was the traffic study, because in the supporting docs, we didn't have anything referencing as a traffic study. We had something that was being presented, but we didn't have one, and he presented one. The key is on page 5 of the supporting docs that were on the original document. It says Section 8 provides a detailed operational plan for drop-off, pickup to include the proposed access on Royal Road. So one of the questions that came from Public Works was page 1. It said, although traffic reports state that the proposed Royal Road access connection will not be used for drop-off pickup operations, there appears to be nothing to physically restrict access by parents, especially when exiting drop-off and pickup areas 1 and entering drop-off 2. So the question is, has there been something, because they said something about doing something to impact the traffic or change the traffic flow. That's one of the questions that one of the folks asked.
Yes, so I'm happy to report that that access point will be gated.
Okay.
And that was a requirement by the city, which has been adopted. And accordingly, as a result of those comments, we have received our traffic sufficiency letter from the Transportation Department.
So both are going to be gated?
Yes.
Both entrances, okay. That was one. This is, and I apologize because this is kind of a little technical. Zoning on this property is T3R NCD3, which is single family. And there was something that came up on the supporting docs, which I didn't understand, and I think I just want a clarification for it, as it creates a base building line. So on number 4, pursuant to easement dedication along Main Highway, please work with Miami-Dade County to verify whether the SAP's proposed setback of 45 feet needs to change to 35 feet. And then it says, number 5, easement dedication will change the base building line required and update on the survey. My concern is, and again, this was a question that I had for you, does this affect or set a precedence for any type of base building line on single-family homes or new T3Rs?
So I'm happy to report that those comments were actually in error. Those are comments from Miami-Dade County Public Works. And the right-of-way that they're talking about is the bike path that runs along Ransom Everglades, and that property was actually deeded. The Ransom Everglades dedicated that property to the city back in 1987, and so the nature of those comments from the county were saying, we'd like you to deed that to us, and our responses were, we're really sorry, but we've already deeded that, and so therefore the base building line stays exactly the way it is.
Cool. Makes sense. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Please come forward now. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed, and I'll bring it back to the board for either discussion or motion.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move PZAB 1 for approval.
Second.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, are we not having any discussion?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
going to discuss it. I guess I wanted to ask staff a question going, and I hate to browbeat this issue, but it is my neighborhood, and I don't want my neighbors coming to me and saying, well, how could you allow this to happen without any? So I want to give at least a detailed report, at least of my findings. But I'm wondering how did they make the analysis of what was kind of the discussion on the traffic and the parking issue? Is there any input from staff, I guess, to give me some type of comfort? Because I understand that Ransom probably has some discussions, and I know that these are possibilities, but we're voting on kind of a reduction on parking. And, and again, I am for the project, but I have some real concerns with the traffic and the parking, because it's not 10 spaces, it's not 20 spaces, we're almost talking about 60 spaces. And these are kids who drive back and forth, and sometimes they park in different places. And so, especially for schools, I think the parking is important. And this is, and it's nothing against Ransom, but these are children who have the means to have cars. It's not in a low-income area where they don't have, the parents can't buy them cars. So I'm very concerned about the parking issue. And I don't know if there's any steps that we can take to bind them to some type of parking, any type of covenants or something like that. But me as a board member, me as a resident, me as a person who lives on Franklin, I'm concerned.
The project of Branson and Everglades has been referred to the appropriate experts, one being the traffic department in the city of Miami and the county. And as far as the city, that is why we are maintaining and having as a condition of our approval the review and recommendations of the traffic department, which this time have deemed the project to be in compliance, and we definitely would incorporate in, as part of our analysis, any recommendations that they may issue or recommend to us upon their final review of the traffic and the parking conditions as proposed for the school.
Again, I don't even know what to say. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how it can be addressed, the reduction. Is there something in writing? Is staff telling me that before there's an approval, these reduction in parking spaces will be addressed? Are you telling me that, well, you know, that...
Okay, let me intersect for a minute. When we review applications, we review under current zoning ordinance. So these type of applications, as any other, falls under T3R regulations, in Article 4, Table 4, for educational uses, it's outlined the number of parking that they need to provide. And they have met those requirements. If we look at page B47, it outlines that for schools, they need a minimum of 1 parking space for each faculty member or staff. They need 1 visitor parking space for every 100 students, and that they need 1 parking space for every 5 students in grades 11 and 12. So when you add up those numbers, it yields 197 parking spaces required, and they're providing 210.
Okay, Ms.
I'm actually piggyback on you. I think that it's very nice to say that they're meeting the requirements, as the applicant has done very well. But the fact is, again, that we are losing a lot of car spaces, and it is an impact to the neighborhood. I mean, Right, when we talk about requirements and what we need and what we do, that's very good, because that is our guidelines. But the fact is that we have an issue in this area, and how to alleviate it. Now, what I heard from the applicant is that you are now, after this, if this passes this evening, you have to go into a fundraising mode.
Yes.
So there is a period of time.
There will be status quo on campus for a while.
6 months, 12 months, 18 months, what? 3 years? So we have 3 years to deliver a contract with the Miami Parking Authority that we are going to have those 58 spaces, so that we do not reduce the number of spaces that are currently on campus.
So the 58 spaces, we already have agreement with either Paradise Parking or City of Miami Parking Authority, the lot at the Coconut Grove Playhouse. So there are more than enough spaces already between those 2 lots. So if I could propose, I understand what your concern is, and so with the sake of your concern, what I would propose is if you'd like to say that that area on Franklin Street cannot be utilized by student parking, and if they park there, they'll be towed. We're willing to advise the students that they can't park there and that they have to park in the lot. If that's your concern related to that area.
It's not it sounds personal, but it's not. At the end of the day, I don't want to lose 58 parking spaces, and I don't want it to matriculate onto the neighborhood streets. I mean, that's my concern. If there's a contract in place with the city of Miami or any other parking entity, whatever it is to make up the difference, that it says, look, we have a contract or we have something in writing that says we are making up those parking spaces, or we are building something that we are making up those parking spaces, then I'm comfortable with it. I just hate for it to be, well, the standard is 110, we lost 58, and maybe we'll get a contract with the city of Miami, maybe we'll park on the side, we'll make it up somewhere, we'll find a way. That's not really convincing to me, you know. So I guess I would like to see something more solidified, more than just, you know, we'll plan, we'll fundraise, you know. And you all have been good stewards of the community, so I'm not panicking, but I do have constituencies to report to.
And I do understand your concern, and that's why we have reserved the right in our plan to park on our campus. So if the discussions with the county and the city and the Miami Parking Authority don't come to fruition as we hope, then there is the space on our campus to provide that parking. It's not in the best interest of the community or of the campus to have 300 parking spaces when there are 2 lots within 200 and I think it's like 84 feet of the campus that are not used all day long. Paradise Parking loves Ransom Everglades because it's consistent income of 100 students paying a monthly payment to them for those students, and so they're committed to providing spaces, and they have space for the additional students as well as the playhouse. So it's not a contract with the school, it's the contract with the students, and those students know that they can't park on campus, that's where it's regulated, and they park one of those 2 places, and they'll continue to do that. But like I said, it's not a today, and it's not 6 months from now. This is a few years out.
Okay. Dr. Martin, did you?
Yes, I just wanted to see if the makers of the motion might consider some kind of modification in terms of the conditions. In my neighborhood, which is a special area district too, it's a different nature. It's a historic preservation neighborhood, but it's in the shadow of the Civic Center. And we found out that the lower paid employees of the Civic Center who didn't want to pay at that time, it's probably gone up since then, $60 a month in order to park in the garages where there was adequate parking for the court personnel that was lower paid, or for health technicians that were not of the highest caliber of pay. The judges and the doctors didn't have any problem with $60 a month, but there was a lot of other people that did. And it's not a matter of income, though. It's just if there are available side streets in which they could park, they did. And our neighborhood became a large parking lot by day. And so we went to the parking authority and we worked out a provision where they have several options, like residential decals only, or you will be ticketed, or you could have parking limited, which is the option we chose. From 10 to 3, there would be no parking other than residential. So there are many options that are available, but I think the makers of the motion, if they would consider and if the residents in the abutting streets would approve of looking at some of those options and approving one that is suitable for their needs, I think that option is a possibility. Again, it's part of the working with the parking authority. They're very flexible in their recommendations because they get revenue from the violators by ticketing them, so they're very, very anxious to put restrictions on parking.
All right, before we discuss that, is there any other discussion? Ms. Gutierrez? Mr. Milian? Did you have?
The only thing that I keep hearing is that they're kind of waiting on one of three options. One of, you know, getting some sort of a contract with the parking authority, one with Paradise Parking, or doing a building structure of some sort on campus. I'm not sure if this is something that would be acceptable, but to say that you would at least accept one of the three as a condition to the SAP. That way, you know, it kind of goes to his concern that parking will be addressed at some point in the next 3 years, whichever way you guys want to do it. I don't know if that's something that would be acceptable to you. Just kind of like a little compromise here.
Yes, if you'd like to make a condition of approval prior to receiving a building permit for one of those primary structures that we need to address these 68 spaces, we're happy to accept that as a condition of the approval.
I was going to do that, actually. But, you know, I'm wondering out loud if, I know our group cannot say you can't park in the neighborhoods, but I'm wondering if the school could say you can't park in the neighborhoods, because we know that if you park in a neighborhood and then come to school and something, God forbid, happens to you, we're going to get sued for a lot of money. So I'm wondering if internally Ransom might be able to set up a policy that says if you park and you park your own risk, and we've had communication with the City of Miami Police Department, and you could get towed, and it's going to cost mom and dad a heck of a lot of money if you disrupt our neighbors, because we're trying to be wonderful neighbors.
Yes.
You can do that? Excellent. So I will amend my motion for approval, a condition of that Ransom Everglades needs to identify appropriate parking for the 50 parking spaces that were previously taken away due to their wonderful expansion. And let me add, I served on a board of a college, Tulane University. And I know people who are involved with Ransom think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And I can tell you that admissions officers think it's the best thing since sliced bread. You have a wonderful reputation, and the school's done so much for our community. So I'm proud to sponsor the amendment.
Thank you.
Sponsor the approval.
Second with the amendments.
Okay. Okay, roll call.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Garavaglia?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Leviano Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Dr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Milian?
Yes.
Mr. Pina?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Tarbert?
Yes.
Ms. Torres?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously as amended.
Would you like to take this back so when you go before save some money for your clients? Well, thank you. Should I tell them to give you a raise? Okay.
Going for two right now.
Mr. Garcia wants to speak to us, as a couple of the other items want to be continued.
Right. As we are transitioning from one item to the next, I'd like to ask for the board's attention for a moment to request that items 7 and 8 before you today also be continued to April 2nd as a result of a conversation with the applicant and their intent to consult with a Wynwood bid to move this item forward. We would like to request that continuance be made today, and we will bring the item back to you on April 2nd if you so wish. Again, these are items 7 and 8 for anyone in the audience who might be here for these items. and they are for properties at the address of 2801 Northwest 3rd Avenue and 252, 268, and 286 Northwest 29th Street in the Wynwood area. Both the land use application and the zoning application, items PZAB 7 and 8.
Yes. Good evening, members of the board. Ben Fernandez, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard. We would respectfully request that you continue this item or defer this item to your April 2nd meeting. We're in conversation with the Wynwood bid, and we expect to be able to come back to you with their support for our application. We have the support of various landowners in the area. We think it's a very good application, but we want to come back with their support as well. So we would ask you to accommodate us.
So moved.
I'm sorry, you made the motion for continuance. Do I hear a second?
Just very quickly before we make it, who here is on these two items? Is there anybody else that's here right now?
There are some people outside, individual members of the bid.
Okay.
Joe First and others are here in support, I believe.
Okay. In that case, then I'll second it as well.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, file ID 08-01015SC, a resolution of the Miami Planning, Zoning, and Appeals Board recommending approval or denial of a resolution of the Miami City Commission closing, vacating, abandoning, and discontinuing for public use streets located between North Miami Avenue and Northeast 2nd Avenue and between Northeast 10th Street and the Florida East Coast Railway, Miami, Florida.
Leonard Helmers, City of Miami Public Works Department. At the December 5th, 2013 Plat Street Committee meeting, the committee reviewed the tentative plat of Miami World Center Plat 1 subdivision and determined that all technical requirements contained in the Miami City Code subdivision regulations have been met and has approved the tentative plat. The members of the Plat and Street Committee have further considered the request for the vacation and closure of the streets with respect to City of Miami code requirements, the easements to be platted to provide vehicular and pedestrian access, and have voted 5 in favor and 0 in denial of this vacation and closure request.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman. Ryan Bayline with offices at 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue, here on behalf of the applicants. This evening, I'm joined by my colleague Iris Escara, Lucia Doherty, and our client Ben Feldman with Miami World Center. We also have our traffic consultant John McWilliams of Kimley Horn. We have Mike Cohen and Jeff Sakowitz of Elkis Manfredi, who are the design architects for this project. And what I'd like to do, if you would indulge me for a couple minutes, because we know you have a crowded agenda, is we'd like to start with an overview of the project, Miami World Center, and then my colleague Iris Escara will walk us through the particulars of our application, and then we will have a short summary and reserve time for any questions or response to comments or something like that. So if that's okay, I'd like to proceed. Thank you. Hello? Oh, there we go. Okay. First, a general overview of the World Center. As you can see here, the project stretches several blocks just west of 2nd Avenue, going west across Northeast 1st, and for illustrative purposes, this property right here, which you may all know is the old arena site, that is not part of this application or part of the World Center. But it's envisioned to be a conference hotel, as I'm sure you may have read about in the papers over the last several weeks or months, or perhaps the blogs. This right here is a conceptual rendering of the project. Again, these are conceptual renderings that have been released to the public. We are very comfortable telling you that what will be built on the property will meet or exceed this level of design and architecture, though, don't hold me to the exact forms of buildings and what have you. So this evening, we are here going back to the first board, to discuss the relocation of 7th Street for these 2 blocks, because essentially 7th Street is 50 feet to the south. We're moving it north and creating a pedestrian promenade. As Iris will explain, this treatment of 7th Street actually was vetted and gone through and approved 6, 7, 8 years before tonight, and was actually as part of a forerunner, if you will, of Miami 21. There's an appendix called the Miami World Center Standards. We're also here to discuss 8th Street, which will be widened for enhanced vehicular circulation and what have you, as well as 9th Street, just for this one block here between 2nd and 1st, which will be a paseo going through what you can see here is a retail complex. I'd like to show you a couple views. Again, they're conceptual. There may be some names that you recognize, which have been in the paper, but the building forms are not finalized. These are just conceptual. So this is the view. Here's 7th Street. This is the view down 7th Street if you were standing on top of or kind of in the middle of the stairs at the American Airlines Arena. We have our pedestrian promenade extending all the way to, again, this is just for illustrative purposes, the proposed Conference Center Hotel, which is not part of our application. The second board I'd like to show you also views 7th Street, and it's important that you see this because consistent with this plaza openness on 2nd Avenue, we're trying to achieve this enhanced pedestrian realm, connectivity from, again, the west coming towards the American Airlines Arena. And as we'll discuss later, is part of our community outreach with our neighbors and partners, specifically the Heat and others, we really have achieved a strong consensus of support for what we're here asking for you to move on this evening. Recommend that you move on to the City Commission. Lastly, this is a view going the other way. So if you were standing here perhaps, looking back towards the east, and again, I know I've showed 2 or 2.5 of the same views, but this is what our clients and their retail partners and their residential partners, with your support, are looking to achieve such that we could break ground on this spectacular retail complex in December of 2014. At the end of the presentation, I know we have a crowded agenda. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, whether they're related to this, whether related to any technicalities on our application or any other matters. But for time purposes, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Iris so she can walk you through, no pun intended, our proposed enhancements for pedestrian and vehicle access.
Good evening, Chairwoman, members. Iris Escara, 333 Southeast 2nd Avenue. Part of our application this evening, although it's called a vacation enclosure, I actually am going to call it an exchange. Because here what we're focusing on is a change from a vehicular-centered traffic circulation to a pedestrian-centered traffic circulation. So here what we've done on Southeast 7th Street, we've gone in and we've closed and vacated what is a 50-foot right-of-way with 2 vehicular lanes and parking, and we've turned it into a 15-foot pedestrian promenade. We're trying to create our own little Lincoln Road, 3rd Street Mall from California. This here is going to be the core of our retail component with regards to having a big pedestrian access. It's proposed, platted as 50 feet, and it also has, in our zoning regulations, a 65-foot with right-of-way building to building. So in essence, what we're creating here is all these retail store frontages with restaurants and so forth that will be able to have access, outdoor seating and so forth in this particular area. So the street in itself is being vacated from right-of-way, but it's given back in exchange the same 50 feet for a pedestrian passageway. So we're removing the vehicles and giving the importance to the pedestrian. With regards to 8th Street, what we're doing right now, 8th Street is a 50-foot right-of-way as improved. We're expanding 8th Street from 50 feet to 75 feet because that is the city's standard right-of-way width. And in essence, we are creating a 3-dimensional easement over 8th Street. So 8th Street right now is 2 lanes. We're expanding it to 3 lanes, and then we're asking just to build above it. So that vehicular access way, which is actually a very important access way for the city, because as you notice, 7th Street dead ends already when you get right past our site. It dead ends at the old arena site. So here, this piece is being vacated. 8th Street is being widened, and we're encroaching upon, over it through a 3-dimensional easement. So 8th Street continues, and we're actually expanding the vehicular access through the site. 9th Street, interestingly enough, 9th Street was always part of a master plan that the CRA had. It's called the 9th Street Mall. It's been in the CRA master plan for many, many years. And unfortunately, the only part that has ever been improved was actually this particular piece over here, where they actually made improvements to have pedestrian circulation as well as a few parking spaces. Here on 9th Street, we're actually closing a 50-foot right-of-way and giving back a 20-foot wide pedestrian paseo. So if I can walk you through the square footages, on 9th Street, we're closing and vacating 22,989 square feet. We're giving back 13,024 square feet in a pedestrian paseo. 8th Street, we're closing and vacating 20,808 square feet. However, we're giving back an access that is wider, 75 feet wide, and is 33,387 square feet. In addition, on 7th Street, we're closing and vacating 46,945 square feet, but we're giving back 56,312. So in essence, it's a greater dedication that is the result at the end, and it's being changed from vehicular to pedestrian importance. And that's actually one of the core principles of the Miami World Center in the original master plan. In the current proposal is really to encourage alternative methods of transportation to our particular site. With that said, I would like to turn it over to Ryan, who is going to go over our neighborhood support.
Thanks, Iris. As I mentioned briefly, we have been working for several months with area neighbors, the CRA, the Miami Heat, and others. Iris is passing out letters that we have received from several property owners, all of whom identified their address and what have you. There's one I would like to read into the record. That's the first one on your on top of the package. Because I think it's particularly important with some of the comments that Iris made about the interrelation between what we're looking to achieve, particularly the treatment of 7th Street as a wide pedestrian promenade, and the cohesion between what we're looking to achieve on 9th Street with the Overtown Greenways plan. So if I could just read the letter into the record. This is from Clarence Woods, Director of the Southeast Overtown Park West CRA, dated November 19th, 2013. On behalf of the Southeast Overtown Park West CRA, please accept this letter confirming our support for your plat. We understand the plat confirms the closure of 9th Street between Northeast 1st and 2nd Avenue. It is our understanding the portion of 9th Street that will be closed, parentheses, will remain open to pedestrians as part of the Miami World Center project. And that understanding is correct. It will be a paseo. With both the CRA's redevelopment plan and the Overtown Greenways plan that Iris briefly mentioned, just west on 9th Street, propose a 9th Street pedestrian mall in this area. So essentially, what we're looking to do follows not just Miami 21 in terms of core principles and multimodal transportation, if you will, but pedestrian transportation, I'm sorry, but it also follows plans that the CRA and visions the CRA had adopted well before us. The goals and objectives of those plans will be furthered. Lastly, in addition, it's our understanding that Northeast 8th Street between Northeast 1st and 2nd Avenue, as well as a portion of Northeast 7th Street between North Miami and Northeast 2nd, will be vacated but will remain open to vehicular and pedestrian traffic, respectively. And again, this letter is from November, but that is the case, as you can see this evening. The CRA supports these road closures to facilitate the development of the Miami World Center project. And I think we had enough copies for everyone as well as staff. There's two other housekeeping items I'd like to just take care of before We reserve any time to respond to comments or answer questions of the board or anyone who wishes to speak tonight. The first is, as I mentioned, I think twice, maybe just once, we have been in discussions with one of our most important and neighbors and a major neighbor and major player, no pun intended, in the city of Miami, and that's the Miami Heat. As you may know, a lot of the land on which the World Center will be built is currently used, about 33 or 3,500 spaces, for parking for Heat games, as well as for the Disney on Ice or other events at the AAA. I am authorized this evening to communicate on behalf of Kim Stone, the general manager of the Heat, and I read, you are authorized to express our conditional support in that we are continuing to meet over the next 2 weeks, and based on our review of your plans and project documents, at this time we are supportive. You can say with 100% confidence that we want your project to be successful. In addition, we have been contacted by neighbors, and I'm not reading my email, but I got an email from their council, and I was asked to read this, so I'm just looking down at it to make sure I don't misread it. And this goes to our neighbors at 600/700 Biscayne Boulevard. So I'm reading from the email. On behalf of the applicant, we have discussed our application with the owners of 600/700 Biscayne Boulevard, who own property adjacent to the proposed street closures and adjacent to the proposed development. We understand they have some concerns regarding the impact of the proposed street closures on traffic circulation in the area. We agreed to meet with the street closures, with the owners of 600/700 Biscayne Boulevard between now and the time that this matter, again, with your support and based on staff's professional recommendation, move towards the City Commission, or considered by the City Commission, and to resolve any concerns that they might have related to our traffic study in a mutually satisfactory manner in order to ensure sufficient time to address and resolve such concerns and reach agreement. We request that the City Commission not consider this before April 24th. And in fact, in speaking with the Planning Director, we are specifically requesting that this item be placed on the April 24th City Commission agenda, but not an agenda before. So with that said, we reserve whatever remaining time. Happy to answer your questions now or whenever Madam Chairwoman deems fit. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have, as the oldest member of this board, I always have to play the institutional memory part. I remember we talked about a green triangle, beginning when Jack Luft was the planning director, and continuing on when Johnny Winton was here, we called it the green triangle because it was a continuous promenade along Biscayne Bay for pedestrians, bicyclists, and those who would enjoy a wide swath of public walkway, all the way connecting to the Miami River. And it's underway and it's partially done. The Miami River Greenway then takes over and it goes as far as 12th Avenue now, and it's almost finished in terms of access. The third leg was the 9th Street Mall, which is it's been a long-standing project of the city and also is partially done. There's still some major issues of how to get across the railroad there, and now that they've reactivated the railroad, it's becoming even a more important obstacle. But the 9th Street Mall, and I heard you make reference to that, I want to make sure that we have the continuity of the original master plan supported by the planning director at that time, who was Jack Luft, and then incorporated into this plan, and the Overtown Greenway, because it's meant to connect Overtown to the Miami River all the way to the bay. And that used to be called the Overtown Greenway, designed by Gerald Marston. So I would like to know for sure that your 9th Street is a continuation of that original green triangle proposed.
The 9th Street, sorry. Hello? There we go. Ninth Street, as you mentioned, ends right here, and then you have the rail issues. From here east, from here through the retail center east connecting. So there will not be interrupted pedestrian connectivity.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, Madam Chair. Or I guess I'm not sure who to direct this to, if to staff or to you, but this is great. I think it's a great project. I'm just wondering, in the project, when you're closing these streets, and I know we're trying to make it more pedestrian friendly, have you taken into consideration, have you been discussing with the county how you're going to integrate public transit into the project?
That is a great question. And the short answer is yes. And I'm sorry if I'm blocking anybody. Maybe I should angle this a little differently here. Just as some other large-scale urban projects that I know have come before the board have sought to do, our eastern boundary contains, at least in this, along the retail portion, is adjacent to two Miami-Dade Transit facilities. It benefits shoppers, residents, our client, the community, for us to do our best to try and incorporate, to upgrade, to enhance those facilities, to work with Miami-Dade Transit, because it's our main eastern facade. And those are existing facilities that, if they were better, to use just a vague word, a positive word, our project would be better. So we have met with Miami-Dade Transit. It is not a quick process to figure out what they're looking for and how we can do it. But the short answer to your question is, yes, we have met with Miami-Dade Transit. We continue to meet with Miami-Dade Transit, and we're hoping that we can achieve that because, again, whether it's connectivity, whether it's some type of structural enhancements, a new elevator, something, the better these centers operate, the better for us.
When you say, just to piggyback on my colleague, when you say centers, are you talking about a Metro Mover? What do you mean?
I meant the two stops, yes. That's what I meant.
Metro Mover
Yeah.
stops, okay.
We've met with MD.
No, you said you meant the two stops.
I meant the two stops. One right here between 8th and 9th, and then one right here at 7th. And there's also a third stop just north of 10th Street.
Okay. And the street that you said you're widening, what is it, 8th? Is there going to be, are there going to be bike lanes as part of that?
With regards to 8th Street, as of right now, the section that's being proposed for 8th Street doesn't include bike paths on 8th Street in and of itself. We do have bike facilities within the project, as it is compliant on that regard. However, the bike path within 8th Street is not being proposed at this time. However, through the pedestrian passageways, the bicycles, it's a mountable curb, you can access it through it, but I believe that the bike paths in this area actually go along the avenues and not necessarily so much along the streets.
And in picking up with what Iris said, one of the discussions we've had with the county has been to see if it is feasible to have some bike lanes on 2nd Avenue. It's difficult at this time, given the width of that right-of-way and the fact the tunnel hasn't opened yet. But the thought is that if the tunnel is able to achieve the reduction in traffic on 2nd Avenue, truck traffic and what have you, that the numbers say that it will, that is something we would certainly consider, because again, it would only be to a benefit to our project, yes.
Right.
On 2nd Avenue, yeah.
So I know that, I think the city of Miami actually adopted there's this policy called the Complete Streets Policy. And I don't know if your project has consultants that actually work on that type of, because I think a project like this is great, but if you don't have that concept, then cars are still going to be coming from the outside, and then it's great that that's pedestrian, but how are you going to make it all work? So
But that's definitely something that John McWilliams of Kimley Horn has worked on. And I think that actually one of the biggest benefits to us is because we're in the core, we have so much public transportation. We have the Metro Rail, Metro Mover, trolley, bus. I mean, if there's any form of transportation that comes, it comes like right in this area.
Right,
So
but
we're
that's
very
like-
lucky.
In addition,
But a
one.
lot, what does Miami-Dade County get? Because in order for that transportation to work, you need money, and I'm not sure how much of this, of the impact fees and stuff from this are going to the county.
It's actually within our DRI fees that we have to pay. We're in the Downtown Development Authority DRI. A component of the fees that the applicant has to pay goes specifically to traffic.
Oh, okay, good.
And I can tell you in our discussions with Miami-Dade Transit, they've made it clear that they think it's great that we do something to make the station, the stops better, but they're certainly not going to pay for it. So we're working with them on that.
Good, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open it to the public. If you'd like to speak on this item, please come forward. And as I said before, give us your name and address first.
Hi, my name is Bradley Knopfler, 133 Northeast 2nd Avenue. I'm a business owner on 7th Street that will be adversely affected by this street closure. Also, my not-for-profit has been very, very active in the neighborhood. Omni Park West Redevelopment Association was the one that did the Grand Central Park temporary park project. Why am I here? Because I saw a notice posted on a street pole last night that said that you're closing the street where I operate a business. Specifically, our not-for-profit is on the list of the net to be notified, registered mail for any kind of notices, have not received it. I telephoned the condominium associate of the Madison, which is I think it's a couple hundred units directly to the west of this project. They were not aware of this at all. Also, some other adjacent property owners that will be adversely affected are not aware of this. No one has received any kind of proper notice. Today I went down to the MRC and got the package that I believe that you have, and I didn't see anything in the package that justifies the street closure. This is the first time the community, all due respect, sir, the community is not the heat or the CRA. The community are people like me that own businesses and work and pay taxes and vote in the neighborhood. We have no idea about this. We've had no communication with them. The Madison, which is, again, the most directly affected, and I have not been able to reach the 4 condominium boards on Biscayne Boulevard. This is not something simple. This is very, very complicated. You're talking about a major metropolitan area with a lot of dynamics here. Every time there's a heat game, the neighborhood is completely gridlocked. 7th Street, I'm sorry, it doesn't go anywhere except to 95. It's gridlocked every time. 10th Street is a major one as well, and 9th Street, every single street is affected. FDOT is also going to be getting rid of the Biscayne Boulevard off-ramp. So all of the traffic now that goes from 395 to Biscayne Boulevard will be routed through this neighborhood, and I don't see how it's going to get to Biscayne. I don't see how the residents are going to have access to it. The point that I'm trying to make here is that we just found out about this. There's no way that I think that you guys could approve this without having know that the community has been properly notified and actually implicated in this. This is something that is going to be a transitional project, but it's going to affect people, and we need to know about it. So I'm just going to ask tonight that you defer this item and do not vote on it or deny it if you have to because of those very reasons, and that they come back with a proper application where they actually have reached out to the community and not just get a letter from the CRA or the Miami Heat. The other thing I want to mention as well is that we're talking about giving away 90,000 square feet of public property to a private developer for $180,000. That's about $2 a square foot, and I don't think you could buy swampland in the Everglades for that cheap. So this is a neighborhood where you're talking about $200 to $300 market price for land. This is not necessarily an issue for the board, but I don't think the city of Miami wants to have a PR sort of mess for giving away public property for so cheap. So anyways, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Evening.
For the record, we did send notifications to all the residents within 500 feet, and he was notified by mail. If he hasn't received it, I'm not aware of that, but he was sent the notice by certified mail. Thank you.
Hello, members of the board, Vice Chair.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Mr. Caston was next.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good evening. Neeson Kasdan, 1 Southeast 3rd Avenue, Ackerman LLP. I represent the Chateau Group, Sergio and Manuel Groskopf, who are the owners of the property at 600 and 700 Biscayne Boulevard. You can see on the board, it's upside down. Still the same property. The property's at 600, 700 Biscayne Boulevard. First, I would like to thank Ryan and Iris for reading into the record the understanding that we have. I would tell you that I'm pretty familiar with the SD16 district as I helped draft the original regulations about 6 or 7 years ago. What's being proposed is a modification in those regulations and the design guidelines. We do have some concerns about traffic and how it will be handled, but we are going to be meeting and working with the applicant to see if those questions that we may have can be resolved to our mutual satisfaction, and hope to be able to report that before this goes to City Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Caston.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Aaron Mislori. I'm a business owner at 697 North Miami Avenue. I own a performance art venue at that location. It's been open now for a little over 4 years. I employ about 47 people, and it's a 13,000 square foot venue that has hosted probably at least 3,000 live acts, corporate events, all sorts of functions. And my site is basically on the corner of 7th Street and North Miami Avenue. I haven't been notified first and foremost, but I became aware of it as Brad did last night. And I'm here today to express my concern with what would happen to my 47 employees and my business once they close down 7th Street for this grand plan. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Actually, one last thing. I would say you deny it if you have to, because there's actually, I'm just one of many people that actually, I know everyone thinks it's just vacant lands, but we actually have employees and people who depend on their living by working there, and we have a really great thing going. I think they should modify their plans to include us in the plan as opposed to affecting us adversely. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I've got a question for him, or either one of those two gentlemen. How many businesses are going to be affected if we vote to close the alley?
I would say currently about at least 5, 6 I could think of, just that I'm implicated in, because I own 3 companies. One of them happens to be the theater. I own a management company with offices right on North Miami and between 10th and 11th. I own a marketing company in the same location. And just talking about my performance art venue, I have 47 employees. If I talk about my other companies and the employees that go there daily to work, it's a mess.
Thank you.
Hi, Ellie Ivy, 800 North Miami Avenue. Actually, I am owner in the Madison, and we were not told. I actually got an email at 6 o'clock at night telling me about this. So this is the first we're hearing about it, and I want to know about parking for us. We all park on the street. There's not enough parking inside our parking area. We all park on the street. Is that going to be affected? What happens to our parking? What happens to our way to get in and out of our building? Because we are the 800 and 801 building. So that was just my questions.
Can you show us exactly where your building is in reference to the project, please? Thank you.
Ma'am, you're with the apartment complex?
Yes, I live in the Madison. I'm an owner there.
Okay, and how many units are there in the Madison?
355, I believe, between the 2 buildings.
And you never got a notice from the city saying that there was today?
No, sir. I didn't get anything in the mail. I didn't get certified mail. And the only reason we found out is we got an email from our management company that only found out today as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
For the record, 2 notices were sent to the Madison condominium. The property was advertised in the Miami Herald, and there were postings all over the property notifying of this hearing tonight. Unless they were ripped, everything was legally done.
And let me ask you about the posting, because I've seen this happen a few times. When you guys put the posting, do you just say that there's something being notified and what it is, or just the notification, the little red signs without anything in writing? Because I've seen that happen a couple of times.
It says what's on your agenda, which is the street closure, the streets that are being closed, the date of the hearing, the time, the location, and the file ID. And if they have any questions or concerns, they could come to the office. Our address is on there, that they could come and take a look at the file.
Okay, thank you.
My name is David Polinsky. I'm a resident and owner at 10 Museum Park at 1040 Biscayne Boulevard. I'm also the president of the condo association there. We have 212 residences plus commercial space just at the northeast corner of the parcels being discussed. We haven't, as a board, taken a formal resolution on this, but we are a relatively small building, so I think, and all of the board members are residents themselves, so we're in frequent contact with the people who live there and with many of the owners. And I think while I'm a recent owner at 10 Museum, the stories I hear from many of the long-term owners is that they feel that our neighborhood is basically incomplete, and they've been waiting for the area, the parcels behind us to be developed for many, many years. Anybody who's driven down that section of Biscayne notices these 4 grand towers, 10 Museum Park, Marquee, 900 Biscayne, and Marina Blue. Beautiful views in every direction, but at the street level, there's nothing going on. There's few stores, few restaurants, no markets, no retail, very little entertainment apart from the arena itself. So I think we feel, at least the residents and owners that I've spoken to, that this would help complete the neighborhood and turn those vacant lands into a lively place. I can't speak to the traffic implications. I know there's been a traffic study done. Obviously, there's some serious questions there, but to us, it looks like a net positive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak on this item? Please come forward.
Christopher McLeod, reside at 2430 Inagua Avenue. I'm a property owner in the area in question. I own 6 mixed-use commercial properties in the Miami Avenue corridor between I-395 and 10th Street. To speak on the notification issue, I'm not sure whether I meet the 500-foot requirement, but as an owner of multiple properties along a corridor that will be highly affected, one would think that I would get some sort of notification. Regarding traffic, I think there's a significant concern, primarily regarding the closures and I guess more generally, what's going to happen to all of the cars and patrons of these heat games and concerts once those lots are taken or in the process of development. I think he stated 3,500 patrons that use that space to park are now going to be left to fend for themselves, kind of weaving in and out of the neighborhoods, I imagine. So that's one question I would ask. Excuse me, sir. Parking?
Madam Chair, if I may. With regards to the parking the surface parking lots that are being removed as part of the redevelopment, this block here, which is actually phase 1 of our particular project, will be accommodating all the parking that we currently anticipate that is being used here, and then some. We are actually proposing the 3,500 parking spaces will be located within our mall phase here. Above the retail, we're proposing about 3 stories of retail, and then the levels above that will be all parking to accommodate the area parking not only for the heat events, but also for the pack events and other special events that happen in the area. So the surface parking lots will be removed, but they will be accommodated on site in a urban parking garage.
But during the course of construction, which I imagine could take between 1 to 3 years, what are those patrons supposed to do at that time?
We just to complete the point, in discussions with our neighbors, particularly the arena, we have agreed that there would be no net loss in parking available to the public to attend events there or anywhere else in the area. There will be, as pointed out, a period of time where all of those spaces may not be available. That is something we are working out with them And I don't have a plan right now to present to you. I'm not sure when we will, but I know that before we start building, we're going to have an agreement, and there's going to be, some alternative parking for those events. Some alternative parking locations.
Understood. I own 2 businesses and 6 properties in the area. I have, at any given time, between 10 to 300 patrons and or employees in and out of the neighborhood. They all need parking, which they are currently accommodated either on the street or pay lots. I think if the lots that are currently being used for profit by M&M Parking at the Miami World Center vacant lots are taken away, it's I guess one could see how this might be of considerable concern, particularly given the fact that they're going to be closing 2 to 3 streets, which I think will be further compounded by the fact that Florida Department of Transportation plans to put their new down ramp on North Miami Avenue, basically gushing all the traffic to these events right down the avenue. So you can imagine how somebody who's been in the neighborhood now for 10 years with a nice kind of slow, easy growth and pace would be concerned, particularly considering, again, I was never notified. I've never been reached out to by the Miami World Center group. So I would consider us neighbors and would have liked to be part of the process, and am somewhat disheartened by the fact that the first time I found out about this was also by a pole sign I just saw 2 days ago. So I guess that's pretty much it. Parking, traffic. So I would have to ask you as well to see about deferring this until we're able to clear up this issue and address the whole parking and traffic situation that I think could be a significant problem to the entire avenue as well as the streets. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, may I respond to just a couple of things very, very briefly? Two points that the gentleman makes. The parking that his, I guess, patrons and employees currently use is our parking. We have an agreement, my client advises me. And I would hope that in deliberating over the merits of our application, the professional recommendation of support and of approval that staff is presenting, that a private contractual arrangement between my clients and a tenant, when they could have come to us and asked us, but if they came to us and said, what's going on, we'd say, well, at some point in time, the parking may not be available, we have an agreement and such. So I'm not sure it's fair to paint us with the brush of we're not telling anyone anything, because for a period of time, they're going to be able to continue to use the parking consistent with our agreement. We're not trying to change or modify that. And secondly, the 2 gentlemen who spoke earlier, who I believe are at Grand Central, and the one who has the performance studio, again, they're renting space from our clients. And I'm authorized to tell you that as of December of this particular year, we have the ability, again, under private contractual arrangements, to relocate them. So I would just hope that the board, in deliberating over, again, the merits of the application, the widespread support, including one I forgot to mention, All Aboard Florida, to go back to the multimodal transportation and connectivity concepts, I would hope that these extraneous matters would not be would not pollinate the analysis that professional staff has put before you. Thank you.
May I speak again, Chair? No? Okay.
Sorry. It's all right. Anybody else that would like to speak? Please come forward now. Okay, seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. I'll bring it back for discussion and/or questions before a motion is made.
I have a question just to follow up on that. The gentleman that spoke do not own the property? Your client owns the property? Oh, okay. So then the notice goes
Yes, that's
to
correct.
the owner. That's why they didn't get notice. Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'm sorry, but the gentleman with the Performing Arts Center keeps raising his hand. Could you, for the record, say whether you own your space or not? That's all I want to know. Do you own the space you currently?
I have a lease for 6 years that's valid and current.
Yeah, that's not ownership. Thank you.
On that point, also, do any of the other gentlemen here that have spoken, do you own the property there as well where you do business, or no?
To the applicant, I know, we all know the importance of this project. It's been talked about in our community for a very long time, and I might have missed the approval or support from the downtown development, DDA. Did I miss that? Today, for this item, was there support from DDA?
The answer is, at this time, we do not have support from DDA. It is my understanding, and again, let me just back up. The images and even the, what I'll call conceptual site plan, with the exception of the level of design and architecture, this is conceptual. And we plan to go to the DDA to request their support, but until we have a final site plan and something ready to submit, whether it be to them or to the city's planning department to begin the site plan approval process, that is something we have not done yet.
So just to recap, as far as the closures, 7th Street closes to street vehicular traffic and and goes to pedestrian. 8th Street is expanded and continues to be vehicular. And 9th Street is closed and also goes to pedestrian?
Correct.
100%. It's not 50-50.